Amish women make their own wedding dresses and wear them 52 times every year after they get married. They're also not allowed to cut their hair no matter what. In this video, I talk about the things that Amish women don't want you to know, including something they might find embarrassing at the end of the video. Wedding dresses. Amish brides don't typically wear white wedding dresses. In strict Amish communities, they wear blue dresses. In more flexible communities, brides can choose their favorite color, but blue and purple are still very common choices. They always wear a white apron and a special covering called a prayer cap with their dresses. These wedding dresses are not just for one day. Amish women wear them 52 times every year, specifically on Sundays. When an Amish woman passes away, she's often buried in the same wedding dress, apron and cape she wore during her life. Some people brag about still fitting into their wedding dresses, but for Amish women it's not about pride, it's a requirement, especially on Sundays and in the afterlife. Strange dolls. Amish girls and women have dolls that might seem quite ordinary at first. These dolls are made to look like tiny women, complete with traditional clothing and hair. That part is pretty normal. However, what makes these dolls unusual is that they don't have faces. Amish women's dolls intentionally don't have faces. This might seem strange, but it's because having faces on dolls is seen as a way to make people focus too much on their looks, and the Amish don't want that. They want to avoid being vain or overly concerned with appearances. To the Amish, it's very important that women don't get too caught up in how they look. This no faces on dolls rule is one way they try to prevent that from happening, and they apply this idea in other ways too. Amish women's clothing. Amish women don't wear jewelry or makeup. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Their clothes are missing something important. Buttons. Amish women's clothing usually doesn't have buttons, and there are a couple of reasons for this. It's not about being modern or not. Buttons have been used for a long time, even back in Germany in the 13th century. So why no buttons? First, buttons are seen as a luxury. They think, why use a button when you can do the same thing with a straight pin? That's why Amish women use pins or hooks and eyes to keep their clothes together instead of buttons. The second reason is a bit different. Buttons are too easy to undo, and that could lead to problems. While it might be fine most of the time, it can be very inappropriate in certain situations. Amish women want to resist temptation, and having buttons that could easily pop off during a flirtatious moment would make things too tempting. Amish women also are required to dress very modestly. Their dresses have to cover their elbows and go at least 6 inches past their knees. The dresses are plain, with no fancy colours or decorations. This is all part of their commitment to modesty and simplicity. Amish women don't wear things like jewelry, makeup or fashionable accessories. These are things that many modern women consider essential, but for the Amish, makeup is seen as something worldly and distracting from their true selves. They worry that if they start wearing makeup or fancy accessories, they might become proud or vain. These are serious sins in their beliefs. However, there are some exceptions. A few Amish women do wear light makeup, and Amish teenagers during a time called Rum Springer are allowed to wear makeup. Having children is mandatory. In Amish communities, a girl grows up knowing that she will become an Amish bride one day and later on an Amish mother. This happens multiple times. In these communities, it's seen as a serious wrongdoing if a woman doesn't want to have children. Every woman is expected to give birth, and not just to 1 or 2 children, but to have many children, even when they're in their 40s. An Amish woman is supposed to have her first baby within a year of getting married, and on average she might have as many as 9 children. You might wonder why they want so many kids. Well, they believe that children are special gifts from God, and they should welcome these gifts with open arms. This means they don't use contraception, which is a way to prevent pregnancy. Having big families also helps in farming because there are many more people to help with the work. But all this expectation of having lots of kids is made even more challenging because they're not allowed to talk openly about how babies are made, not even between a mother and her daughter. We'll explore this more later on. No sex talking. Amish women are very conservative when it comes to anything related to sex. They don't talk about it, mention it, or even give their children the birds and the bees talk. So teenagers are left to figure out the changes happening in their bodies and their feelings on their own. This makes wedding nights quite interesting as couples may not have discussed these things beforehand. Public displays of affection like hugging or kissing between married or dating couples are generally discouraged. It's also strictly forbidden for unmarried people to be physically intimate before marriage. However, it's not uncommon to see unmarried women who are expecting a baby, even though premarital intimacy is not allowed in their community. No birth control. The Amish don't believe in using birth control, and they view children as wonderful gifts from God, as we've already discussed. In Amish communities, having at least 3 children is seen as essential for a woman, and larger families with 7 to 10 kids are common and strongly desired. When a couple in the Amish community gets married, it's understood that they care about each other enough to have frequent sexual relations. So when an Amish woman gets married, the general expectation is that she will have children soon after. Being childless or not wanting to have children after marriage is considered sinful and not in line with their beliefs. These attitudes contribute to the prevalence of large families in the Amish community, whether the parents really want many children or not. The Rum Springer phase. In many Amish communities, there's a tradition called Rum Springer, which means running around. It begins when Amish teenagers are between 14 and 16 years old. During their Rum Springer year, young Amish men and women who haven't been baptized are allowed to explore the outside world. They can leave their strict Amish families and communities, and they have the freedom to do things like use drugs or alcohol and have relationships as they choose. The purpose of Rum Springer is to let these Amish teens experience all the different aspects of the world and its temptations for a set period of time. At the end of the year, they have to decide if they want to come back to the Amish community, get baptized and live according to Amish rules, or if they want to leave the Amish way of life and go their own way. Surprisingly, more than 90% of Amish women who go through Rum Springer choose to stay with their Amish community, and that's quite impressive. They cannot divorce. The Amish usually marry within their own community, and this can sometimes lead to a smaller gene pool. If you're Amish and you get married, it's essential to know that you're committing to a lifelong marriage. Amish take the till death do us part of marriage vows very seriously. Divorce is not allowed or supported by the Amish church. If your partner does get a divorce, you can't remarry because it's considered adultery. Although divorce is not officially banned among the Amish and it's a personal choice, it's strongly discouraged. Getting a divorce could lead you to leaving the Amish faith and being shunned by the community. For many Amish people, it comes down to either staying in an unhappy marriage or leaving the Amish way of life. This may seem like an easy choice, but for most Amish, being Amish is all they've ever known, and being kicked out of their community would be deeply traumatic. This is why the Amish have an extremely low divorce rate, even though separations are becoming more common. Their strict hair rules. Amish women follow a very strict interpretation of the Bible, and because the Bible criticizes women with short hair, Amish women are not allowed to cut their hair. In addition to not cutting their hair, they are also prohibited from shaving their legs, underarms, or any other body areas. The Amish consider a woman's hair to be a sacred religious symbol and a sign that God is with them. As a result, forcibly or deceitfully cutting off their hair is considered a hate crime, and people have been sent to jail for doing such things. Furthermore, Amish women are required to pin up and wear their hair in a bonnet almost all the time. This rule is in place to prevent these women from showing off the long and impressive hair they grow, as that could lead to feelings of pride and vanity. So despite having beautiful long hair like Rapunzel, Amish women keep it covered to avoid these pitfalls. They work through all their pregnancy. Amish women work very hard from morning till evening, even when they are pregnant. When they're expecting a baby, they're not supposed to complain or stop working for the day. Pregnancy is not openly talked about, and everyone pretends not to notice it. They don't make a big fuss over pregnant women. They also don't seek medical care before or after the baby is born, which can lead to problems. It's not unusual for an Amish woman to keep working at home or on the farm until her water breaks. When it's time to have the baby, they usually do it at home in their own bed, but if there's an emergency, they'll call for help or go to the hospital. What's remarkable is that Amish women use a quiet method when giving birth without any pain medication. That means they don't make any noise or scream, even though childbirth is incredibly painful and draining. It's quite impressive how strong they are. No education after the age of 14. For the Amish, formal schooling ends after the 8th grade. They believe that this level of education is enough to prepare them for life in their community. They think that going beyond this level is wasteful and goes against their religious beliefs. They have successfully argued this in the US Supreme Court. Usually, Amish children attend schools run by the Amish themselves, and very few Amish kids go to high school or university. In Amish schools, children learn about Amish values, culture, and the importance of obeying and cooperating with others, among other things. Typically, Amish girls start school when they are around 5 or 6 years old, and their education stops when they're about 13 to 14 years old. After that, they usually don't go to school anymore, except when they become teachers themselves. Instead, they're trained to take on the traditional roles of homemakers and housewives. Being submissive to husbands. The concept of submission is quite different in Amish communities compared to modern society. In Amish culture, submission is a central part of an Amish woman's life. An Amish woman is expected to see her husband as the leader of the family, and she typically cannot make decisions or take actions without his knowledge and approval. When they are in public, she's not supposed to raise her voice at her husband, argue with him, or show disrespect. Instead, she should follow his lead in all matters and only express her thoughts and suggestions in private, usually within the privacy of their bedroom. Wives are also expected to walk behind their husbands and not ahead of them. Even when they're traveling in a buggy, the husband is the one who drives, symbolizing his role as the one in charge. In this way, by submitting to her husband in all aspects of life, the Amish woman is following what is considered the natural order of things within the Amish community. It's important to understand that this is a cultural and religious practice specific to the Amish, and it may not align with the values and beliefs of modern society. Amish wives cannot work. The Amish strongly believe in the saying that a woman's primary role is in the home, and they religiously practice this belief. In practical terms, once an Amish woman gets married, even if she had a job before, she's expected to leave that job and dedicate all her energy to raising a family and taking care of the home. Her responsibilities include cooking, cleaning, sewing, gardening, and overall making sure her family and home are in the best possible condition. What she typically doesn't do is work outside the home for pay. However, it's worth noting that not all Amish wives stay exclusively at home. A minority of them work full or part-time jobs in fields they're interested in. Some even run their own businesses, either independently or with help from their husbands and children. These businesses are usually small retail shops or restaurants that sell handmade crafts and home-cooked food. No matter what they choose to do, Amish women are expected to be fully productive and contribute positively to their families in various ways. They're not encouraged to be boastful or showy about it. Strange wedding rituals. Contrary to what you might expect given the strict Amish lifestyle, Amish women are not coerced into arranged marriages. They have the freedom to choose their partners when they reach a certain age. The process of courtship among the Amish is quite simple. A young man shows his interest in a young woman by offering her rides to and from dances and religious services in his horse-drawn buggy. When it comes to proposing marriage, it's not about giving a diamond ring, but often involves a practical gift like dishware. Weddings are also straightforward affairs. They used to take place after the harvest in the autumn, but nowadays they can happen at any time of the year. The wedding celebration includes a meal where simple food is served, and the newlyweds spend their first night together in the bride's home. Interestingly, after marrying the woman of his dreams, an Amish man has to live with her parents for a few months. It's not all serious though, because it's common for friends and family to play pranks on the newlyweds. They might tamper with their bed or create noise nearby to make it hard for them to sleep or have private conversations. Shameful secret. In recent years, women who have left the Amish community and investigative journalists have reported troubling issues involving Amish girls and women. These issues include cases of abuse and mistreatment. An investigative report by Cosmopolitan magazine in January 2020 shed light on a culture of abuse based on interviews with over 30 Amish individuals, as well as discussions with police, lawyers, academics, judges, and outreach workers. Several factors contribute to this troubling culture. These include the patriarchal and isolated lifestyle within Amish communities, limited education that typically ends after the 8th grade, a taboo against discussing sexual matters, a culture that sometimes blames and shames victims, limited access to modern technology, and the emphasis on forgiveness over punishment in their religion. While the mainstream #MeToo movement may not have significantly impacted Amish communities, there has been a gradual increase in Amish victims coming forward to share their experiences. This has begun to reveal a previously hidden issue. That's all for today. While their commitment to faith and community is evident, there are also unique struggles and secrets that remain hidden from the outside world, inviting us to reflect on the diverse experiences within the Amish culture.